Hello everybody, welcome to Handmade by Trish. It's the 3rd of February 2021 and I want to share with you this really beautiful card. Now I didn't design this. This was designed by a German lady, independent Stampin' Up demonstrator. Now I don't really know how to pronounce her name, but I think it's Susanna Gabler, Poland. She did a beautiful video of making this card on YouTube, but it was in German, so I thought I would do an English version and with the metric measurements, so what I use here in New Zealand, and anyone in the UK watching this would also have these same measurements that I'll go through today. So I hope you enjoy this as much as I do. It's a really beautiful card, and so I'm going to make it from scratch for you. I have got some bits ready already. So we are going to start with the card base. Now, if you're in the UK or New Zealand or Australia, we use A4 sheets of paper here. So it's half of an A4 sheet. I've already cut and scored it. And so the measurements of the front here is 14.85 by 10.5. And I do have a bone folder here, and I should just crease it so it's nice and creased. So we're just starting with that card base. Then I have created my first layer, which is in this beautiful seaside spray colour. This is a retiring colour. This will only be available until the 3rd of May this year. And then it will be retiring and we'll be having some new colours coming, but this is a really beautiful colour, beautiful soft blue. So I highly recommend, if you like it, to get it before it expires on the 3rd, and because there'll probably be a mad rush on it towards the end of the catalogue, then the earlier you get it, the better chance of making sure it's in stock. The next, I've got a piece of the Whisper White, or now the Basic White is the new one, although this is still my old white stock. And I'm using the Layered Leaves Dynamic Textured Impressions Embossing Folder. Quite a mouthful that, isn't it? This is the embossing folder here, and you can see it's a lovely leaf pattern. And so this piece here measures 9.5 centimeters by 13.9 centimeters by 9.5 centimeters. So I'm just going to pop that into my embossing folder, and I'm just going to keep you holding there for one moment while I just quickly pop it through my Big Shot. Big Shot's just a little bit big for the screen, so I've just done that off camera, and then you'll see the lovely impression. This is definitely my favourite and probably most used embossing folder that I own. Absolutely gorgeous it is. So that's going to be my next layer on my card, and then the last layer is going to be with the vellum cardstock, and this is where the magic really happens. So the stamp set that I've used for this is called Corner Bouquet, and it is a celebration item out of the January to February 2021 catalogue. So this is celebration catalogue here. It's only valid until the 28th of February, so there's only a month left, and you will see that particular set. Here we go, here on page 8. So this is the stamp set, and it comes free with a minimum purchase. So we're using this stamp set, and so although it is a floral design, we're actually using the smaller one, and we're going to turn it into wings. So I'll just bring that back to show you. So you'll see this is the stamped image here, and you might be asking, well, how did you get it to go the other way? And that's what I'm going to show you, and that's what I say, this is where the magic happens. So you do need some sort of stamp positioning tool. So in my case, I have here the Stamparatus, and we don't need this foam pad because we are using the red rubber stamps. just going to get that little stamp out. Now the measurements that I've used for the vellum, and I've already lost it, here it is here. So the measurements I have used for this are 12.4 centimetres by 8 centimetres. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, it might be easier, so what you also need to do this technique, you could use a piece of plastic. The thing I have found the best, that's given me the best results, is the very thin silicone mat out of these Big Shot. It's called the Big Shot embossing mats. Now I haven't tried it with the new Stampin' Up mats, because the Stampin' Up embossing machine is different now, and they have impression mats, and I'm sure they're similar. I'm not sure, I haven't tried it, and it'll be worth trying later, but I don't have those, so I'm just going to use this silicone mat. But you can use a piece of plastic, anything that won't absorb the ink, so that the ink sits on the surface. I'm just going to put my paper on here, and I put this blue mat down first just because it's much easier to see the vellum against the white when you've got it on the dark surface. And so I want to position my wing so that it's going to fit if I have it that way as well, if that makes sense. So I want it to be able to fit on both sides. So I'm going to sort of center it top and bottom, and then sort of make it look sort of wing base there. And now I'm actually going to turn it around, because when using the Stamparatus, you're best not to have the stamp too close to the edge, because you sometimes can't get a really good impression. So by turning it around, it's now going to stamp way over here, so I'm well away from the edge. So I'm just going to pick my stamp up. Now I am actually not going to stamp on the vellum at the moment. What I'm going to do is stamp on this mat. Now, using the Versamark ink, this is the really sticky ink used for heat embossing. We're going to ink up my stamp. Okay, and then I'm just going to stamp it onto the blue mat. Now, hopefully you'll be able to see this on here when I lift it up. Yes, you can see the shiny ink on there. I'm just going to ink it up again. I always like, when using the Versamark, and of course because I'm using the Stamparatus and can stamp in exactly the same position, why not make sure it's really nice and juicy. So I'm just going to pop that back down, and let's lift it up, and we should have, yeah, really nice juicy impression. You should all hopefully be able to see that. So now, using my piece of vellum, I'm going to tuck it up into the corner, and then I'm just going to let the vellum drop onto the image. Just using my finger, you can see I'm getting all that impression, just pushing down, and you can actually, it's really easy on the vellum because it comes right through. You can see it come through. So now I'm going to pick this piece up, and now we've got the Versamark. You can see it there, on there. I'm just going to move my little blue piece away. Turn it around, and now it's hard to see again because it's on the white, but I've just turned it around. I'm going to stamp it up again, and this time stamp it on this side. So you can see there that I've got the wing on both sides. I probably left a little bit too much of a gap, but it won't matter when I put the little round circle in the center. So I'm just going to move this to one side. I'm going to get a little piece of scrap paper here, and using my white embossing powder, I'm just going to cover the wings in the white embossing powder. Just make sure it gets over the whole image. Now you'll see where there's a few places on here where a little bit of embossing powder has gone in places that I don't want it, and I'm going to show you how to get rid of that in a minute. I'm just going to pop that to one side while I clean up this, because I could just imagine tipping it everywhere. Okay, I'll get rid of that scrap. Pop the lid back on there. Doesn't matter how careful you are, you get little bits of embossing powder everywhere when you do this. So you could use a paintbrush, you could use a pair of tweezers. This is, it's like a embossing tool on one end, and on the other end is like a silicone. It's used for painting and things like that. So here I'm just going to use the silicone bit just to go over where the bits are that I don't want them. Just get in nice and close so that I can get all the little, it's not too bad actually, most of it's come off as it should. You could perhaps use your embossing buddy, or some people use a used dryer sheet that you put over the vellum before you stamp on it, and that just helps powder to not stick where you don't want it. So that's looking pretty good. Most of it had come off. So as you can see where all the embossing powder is. Just grabbing my heat tool. This is an old one. Gosh, I've had this more than 30 years, this heat tool. And I like to use this one because it's nice and quiet, so it's good when you're doing videos. So we're just going to heat it. Now with vellum you want to be not as close as perhaps you would be with normal cardstock, and it's good to heat it from the top and from the bottom, and just move it around because you don't want it to burn or curl the vellum. Can get a little bit hot on the old fingers. With the camera where it is, it can be a little bit hard. I don't want to knock the camera. It's starting to go on this side. Just get the edges. Nice little bit there. I think that's that wing done. And just turn it around. These heat guns get really hot, and I sometimes use tweezers if my bit of paper is a little bit small, but this is big enough I can direct it away from the heat a little bit. This one's pretty much there too, I would say. So let's just go back over that. Yeah, that's looking all really good. So we turn that off now and just give that a minute to cool. So while that's cooling, I'm just going to pop that to one side, and now we're going to do the little center piece. So if I bring my Stamparatus back, clean my corner stamp, get the embossing or the Versamark off that, and we can put that away. Now, because this next stamp that I'm going to use, it's out of the Punch Party pack. This is also another Celebration product, so only available until the end of February, and is free with a minimum purchase from any of the Stamping Up catalogues. And the stamp I'm going to use is this one here, and it says, "My heart is wherever you are." I think that's a really lovely sentiment, and it looks like a little heart being lifted by a balloon to me, but I just want this round sentiment. I don't want these edge bits here, so I'm going to show you an easy way of doing that. So I've got a little bit of scrap paper, and this is the smallest circle of the layering circle dies. It's the smallest circle, so I'm going to use this bit of scrap paper. So what I want to do is I first of all want to cut out the circle out of this bit of paper before I stamp on it. Just get this is my little mini Stampin' Cut and Boss machine. the Stampin' Up one. I only have the mini. I don't have the big size one, which was why I used my big shot earlier. And I'm just going to layer up the sandwich I need. Just pop the circle on there. Crank that through. Pop that away. Here's my circle. Okay, so now bringing the Stamparatus back, this is going to allow me to line it up perfectly before I stamp it. So let's just pop that out the way. So these are the photopolymer stamps. So I am going to use, not the bit of paper, I'm going to use the foam mat that I took out earlier from here and just pop that in there. Use it this way so it's furthest away from that edge. I'm going to get the stamp out that I'm using. So the way that I find is the easiest when there's so little margin, if you have a look at this here where I've stamped it, the margin is so small around the actual sentiment that's why I've done it this way, where I've cut the hole first and I can make sure that I can line this up perfectly before I then try. If I was to stamp that out and then try and get it perfectly lined up with the die, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. And then of course as you put it through the machine, if the die moves ever so slightly, that makes it more difficult too. So by holding up the stamp, I can actually place this with my fingers, actually place it right onto the sentiment. I can turn it over and see how that's going to stamp, and that looks like that's going to stamp beautifully. So I'm now going to put this back into the hole. And you can kind of wriggle it, you'll feel it lock into where we die cut that out of there. So if I now pick up the stamp, take that little piece and pop it into my circle that I've already cut out. So I'm using the Seaside Spray ink, and like the Seaside Spray paper, this is also retiring at I say end of April, early May, 3rd of May I think. So if we ink up our stamp and then stamp it onto the circle that we've already cut. So you'll probably find that it's stuck on there, but we can just lift that off there. And there is my perfectly stamped sentiment. Really, really, as you can see, incredibly close to the edge. It's just the perfect fit. Any smaller and it wouldn't fit. So that now is just finished with that scrap, so we can get rid of that. Okay, so let's just put this stamp away quickly. So now that I've got my actual sentiment stamped, I'm going to get a bit of scrap Seaside Spray blue paper. I'll better close my ink pad. I don't want to put anything down in that would be horrible. And using the 1 3/8 circle scallop punch. Now this is currently on the clearance rack in my Stampin' Up shop. This is now sort of a retired item. It's no longer in the current catalogue, but you can pick it up on the clearance rack. It's a really, really good punch to have. I mean, of course you could use a die, but punches are just so easy. So we're just going to pop that in there, punch it out. And there we have our perfect scallop, and that's just going to sit nicely on there, which is going to layer onto our wings. So you can see how it's all going to come together. So we have a little piece of, I think this is Misty Moonlight and white, like baker's twine, and the actual length of this is 18 centimeters, but that's only rough. I'm going to cut it to the right size once I'm ready to place it on my project. So let's go to assembling the card. So we've got our white card base that we prepared earlier. I'm then going to tape down. In fact, what I should have done was use this piece to punch out my, could have punched out my circle in here. Because I'm layering it up, you wouldn't actually notice that there was a hole punched out of it. It would have been more economical on the paper, but maybe next time. So I'm just using the stamp and seal, and just going to pop some around the 4 edges. Whoops. And the measurements are such that you'll have a nice little white border all the way around the card. So I just kind of eyeball it. Eyeball the border. Then with your embossed piece, I'm just going to use the same stamp and seal on here. There's a bit of a knack to using this, and I do get myself in a bit of a mess with it. And we're just going to once again layer it so that there's a little border all the way around. Now with this piece, vellum is incredibly see-through, and so we don't want to see lots of adhesive sticking around. So what I can do is put a little bit of adhesive on the back here in between the wings, because I know that is going to be covered by the circle. So I'm just going to use little bit of adhesive there, and then I'm just using the glue. Now the actual glue I use is this Tombow multi-purpose liquid glue, but I decanter it into one of these fine tip bottles because I really like the tip and how it can be a little bit more precise, and it's only a little bit of glue, because this glue you only need the tiniest amount, and I find with the tip on the bottle that the glue comes in, it just kind of often gives me more than I want. So I'm just putting a light layer of glue where the embossed image is, because you're not going to see it through the white embossing. And it's just really fine. I don't even know if you can see the glue. It's just so fine. It just needs a little bit. It's just really to hold it down, just so it doesn't come off the card. I want it to be looking so it isn't stuck down, but at the same time I don't want it lifting off. So just where there's quite a lot of white embossing, I'm just putting a little touch of glue on there. Okay, so now we can put this onto our card. And of course, because the layer that we're putting it on to is also embossed, that's another reason why I'm using the glue, because then it will stick down into the various grooves. And what I did when I was making this earlier was I just found something that I could place on it. So let's use that, and I just set that aside to dry while I got this bit ready. So this is the little sentiment piece, and just using a little bit of my stamp and seal, there's some on there, and just layer it up onto the scallop. Stick that down. Now let's come back to this. The glue takes a little bit longer to dry on vellum than it does on normal cardstock, because it doesn't soak in the same, but that looks pretty stuck down to me, so that's good. With this, I'm just going to put another tiny bit of stamp and seal down in the middle of the wings again, that's going to be covered up. And this is just where I'm going to create a loop. Stick that down on there. Then I'm using a couple of Stampin' Dimensionals. Now, because this is going to be in the middle of my sentiment piece, I want to put the Stampin' Dimensional so that either side, so it kind of leaves a channel in the middle here that will go over. take the backing off there. I've got a rubbish bin somewhere, there it is. And then just pop that over there like so. Now this is when you will want to just trim up your ribbon. To the correct length that you want. And the last little touch that I added to it was a little heart. Now this is the heart from the, oh, I want to say it comes from the Pets suite, but it might not be. I think it comes from the Pets suite of products, but you can buy just the hearts on their own, the resin hearts on their own. And these are lovely, but they come in red and white. I don't want red. I don't really want white either. So that's where our Stampin' Blends or any alcohol marker will work for this. And I'm using the fat tip here, the like felt tip part. And I am just going to colour in one of these hearts with the marker. So I've used the Seaside Spray, the same colour as the cardstock, and I've used the dark Seaside Spray Stamping Blend, and I have just coloured that heart so you can see there the little bit of blue. I find the easiest way to get embellishments off the backing is to hold the embellishment in just gentle circular motions. You can get bigger and bigger until it should eventually just slip off. Oh, and it bounced away somewhere. Oh, I heard it. There it is. Chase it around my workspace. And then we're just going to lay it where we want it on the card. It's being difficult. I'm going to stick it there. The one I did earlier I stuck quite near the bottom, but I'm going to stick it a little bit further up this time. So we're going to put it there, and it's already got an adhesive dot on the back, so that's now stuck on there like that. So I hope you've learned something new now that I've shown you how to do that mirror technique with the embossing. It works really well, and in fact I think it works better than ink when you're doing that mirror technique, because with the embossing it really gives you a nice smooth coverage. With ink you always get a slightly lighter impression with a mirror image, so it's never like the original. Whereas this, because you're using embossing powder over the top, you really don't notice that. So I think that's a really pretty card. So thank you very much, Susanna. I will put a link to Susanna's video in my video so you can watch that if you'd like to listen to it in German. But yeah, I just want to thank her for such a beautiful card. I think this is going to be my go-to sympathy card, which unfortunately I've needed a few of those this year already. So please, if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any further videos that I do. And I hope to catch up with you all again soon. Bye.